Good evening. How are you? Well, I've been busy today with my clients, and also it's that time of year when in Virginia and Loudoun County in particular, we have all these elections. I mean, for the Board of Supervisors, constitutional officers, and so forth. And I myself am up for re-election if I file to be on the Soil and Water Conservation District as a director. And I've served 2 terms, they're 4-year terms, and I'm thinking of doing another one. And the reason I would do it is because it's a way to have a voice in how we handle a commodity that's going to be in rare availability and of compromised quality, namely water. It was too late when I came home, dark and so forth. I had attended a Democratic meeting for the county, and there's something like 30-something different offices that are up this year, including the one that I probably will run for. The last election in this county, I got 56,000 votes, and I've enjoyed the work, so that's why I would continue doing it. As for the news stories today, as I present my stand and talk, it is always ironic, the holidays we're having that are considered public, or the Memorial Days we're having, and in how our public policy contradicts what these holidays, what these memorials are all about. So this is Black History Month. And one of the questions that came out of the Tyre Nichols killing, in my opinion, police killing, beating him to death so that he died in the hospital several days later, one of the questions people asked, did he die in vain? If we mean by that we're going to do something about police brutality, then the answer is probably we're not going to do anything about it. We should, we need to, I support it, you probably support it as well, but we're not going to do anything about it. So, did he die in vain? I don't believe that. I believe that he is one of those ripples Robert Kennedy talked about that join other ripples that can form an enormous strength of a flow of water, of vitality that can change history and make a difference. So I do believe that in that sense he didn't die in vain. But our political system is so sick and so toxic and so dystopic that by that measure, he appeared in vain. But we can change that, and we must change that, and we will change that. I am a firm believer that we should have truth in democracy, that we should not posture. I don't think we serve well our function as leaders or as citizens if we buy into posing rather than talking about the truth of the event. So what am I talking about? Biden and McCarthy are becoming part of a bromance for one day, and about how they're going to work together and how they're going to fight hard together, and that's going to be terrific. Now, there have been past examples in which there were odd couples, in a good sense, who came together. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill had an appreciation for each other, a friendship, and they were able to get some things done, although probably you and I didn't support most of what Reagan did. But on some level, O'Neill and Reagan was able to touch that chord. But when we're talking about arguing hard, what are we talking about arguing about? Are we talking about Social Security in terms of increasing the debt and compromising that so that in the future the debt will be less? And certainly the Republicans are talking about it, and we say we're not talking about it. So how do you argue when your positions are so different and legitimately different? And in my case, I'm supporting the Democratic view of not just Social Security, a whole bunch of issues. Are we going to pass national legislation to protect pregnant women so that they can have an abortion if that's what they want to do during the periods of time that we've allotted are the appropriate times in public policy and that we thought was the way to handle it for 50 years. So those are kind of big issues. And since I have conservation on my mind, there's a pebble mine that would produce gold and copper in Alaska. And it's been stopped by the EPA, and it's to save the salmon spawning grounds. Now, let me say this about it. I've had somebody who wanted to retain me to represent them in Alaska because of this issue. Not so much the Pebble Mine, but what they were doing in terms of the salmon spawning ground and what they were doing to waste this enormous natural resource. And it seems impossible, but this is a very helpful step in that direction if they do it. I mentioned the debt, and it's still in my mind. And the thing about the debt limit, if you will, is what kind of deal can Biden and McCarthy work? And I can't imagine a deal. First of all, you don't need a deal to increase the debt limit to cover the expenditures and the obligations you already made. So in my opinion, when somebody says, we want you to agree to something, it's not about the debt limit as to our current obligations. It's saying that going forward, if we approve the debt limit, which we have to do, and it's unconscionable if we don't, will you agree in the future that we will not commit ourselves to expenditures in Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and a whole variety of things? And that's the trouble. That's where the rub is. And so I don't see the value in creating a false hope that Biden and McCarthy are going to be able to accomplish something, whether it's about Black History Month, about the environment, about our debt limit, about any of these things. And I think it would be better to be honest about our differences, which are not susceptible to compromise, not in any sense. Another thing that happened today, which is kind of you did us, we did you, tit for tat, was Representative Omar. Now, she's from Minnesota, and you may remember that she made some anti-Semitic remarks, and she apologized for them. Now, we had some people removed from committees for things they said, did, and presented in terms of their performance. This was when the Democrats were in charge. Now, the Republicans are in charge, and they're saying, well, we don't want Omar because she made anti-Semitic remarks, and not just her. I have two views about this. One is a little peculiar because I say to myself, why can't the Democrats be as strong as to say, this happened, you have to account for it? Now, I'm not giving good faith to the Republicans. I'm just saying that they have couched it that way. They pick an issue. Omar was anti-Semitic. Yes, she did apologize. She's done a lot of other things since. But we're just not going to have her on that committee. And then we say, oh, that's unfair. Well, you set a rule. They disagreed with the basis for our rule, that is the Democrats' rule, and now they're getting back. Now, McCarthy says things like, I think we should talk about what the standards should be if we should do this going forward, because we shouldn't have tit for tat ever going forward. But the interesting approach by the Republicans is in their disarray, they still show strength on this, and this strengthens McCarthy's hand in his conference, in the Republican conference, the Republicans that are on his side, and narrowly made him speaker. So we have to keep that in mind when we're paying attention, that there's a kind of weakness the way we whine. We whine great. We fight not so good. We wave our finger, but we don't act. Now, we did act in some ways on this issue, and it's gotten us into this situation where we have to say, yeah, we did that, and so now you're doing this. I don't know exactly where I get this feeling from, but it seems to me that the best way to, quote, get even is to do well and to say that we need standards for this and to accept the undeniable facts when some of our people do things. Now, there are other members of Congress that just don't fit into any even estimable category. So I think it's important to call out the Republicans for what they're doing, but we can't ignore that when Speaker Pelosi did what she did, we cheered her on. And so if we want to find a way going forward to have rules that represent mature conduct as the representatives in the House of the People, the Congress, we're just going to have to work at that. And I don't think that the pairing of Biden and McCarthy is the pair. And I'm not sure in the House there's anybody, including the minority leader, who can be helpful. Another thing you have to keep in mind, because I've served on the Hill when Democrats were in the minority, is it's a hellish time. Now, when I served in the Senate, which was a longer time ago, there were still opportunities to work on legislation together and to have compromises, and we weren't campaigning all the time, so we were also governing. Now we campaign 99.9% of the time, and nothing goes to the floor unless it's part of a campaign. And I don't know if Senator Robb in his memoir wrote this or not, but when he was sitting down after he left the Senate involuntarily, and in part because he couldn't get anybody else to run for the seat and he thought it was his obligation to run, but his heart wasn't in it, he said that the thing that made him want to leave, that made him sick about the serving, was that, how I put it, that when you presented a bill with a member of the Republican Party, and Chuck Robb was a Democrat, former Virginia governor, son-in-law to LBJ, marrying one of his daughters. He said that there was always, what is the angle? What is the political angle? So that there was an inability to propose good policy legislation unless it had an angle for the Democrats. And I'm sure the Republicans are doing the same now, and we talk about it. And we're not going to move forward until we learn how to govern separately from how we campaign. It can't be a nonstop campaign all the time about everything. Another thing that's interesting today, it strikes me, is the fact that Hunter Biden is deciding to be aggressive. And he wasn't a classmate of mine, but Abby Lowell and I went to Columbia, and we know each other, and we've been active in a group called the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. And I mention him because he's representing Hunter Biden. And they seem to be having an aggressive defense. That is, they're calling out the government and what they're doing and what they've done with the information that Hunter Biden has given them. Now, why would you do that? It makes me feel like there's something going on, and the Justice Department may be thinking of doing something about Hunter Biden. Sorry to spread these rumors, but why do you get into a fight, retain counsel, spend time, money, and, if you will, personal capital in the sense of what people think of you now, and you're going out and you're publishing things and talking about it. And it sounds like they're setting up a context for them to have to fight against the Justice Department. And maybe they think by doing this, they'll intimidate the Justice Department into backing off whatever hypothetical prosecution they may be thinking about. So that's my thinking about the day. We continue to have a weakness in our approach to governance when we can't find a way to tell the truth in situations that educates the people so that they can be with you. And I think that we, the people, have to continuously tell those in government, we want to know the real deal. We want to know what's actually going on. And when you insult our intelligence because we can put things together inferentially as to what's really going on, you take us and play us for the fool. We're not fools. We know what's going on. We want you to tell us, and we want you to tell us in a real fashion how you're going to go forward, so that Tyre Nichols doesn't die in vain, so that Social Security isn't compromised and people aren't unsettled who are in retirement age. We want persons who are confronting the police to know that they are secure and that the color of their skin isn't going to be the basis of a beating or a killing. You probably know, if you have any friends who are persons of color, that they have the talk. And the talk is to say, be careful how you conduct yourself with the police. You give them any excuse, you're going to find yourself beaten, perhaps dead. And I've talked to a lot of people over the years, friends of mine, and this is not an imaginary thing. We even had a white mayor of New York who had children of color because of his wife, and he was part of that process to describe to his children how to be safe. Because when you see a person of color and you're a bigot, you don't know who they are or what they're connected to, and you shouldn't need to decide only based on their race that you're going to beat the living daylights out of them. One interesting thing about Tyre Nichols was that the police who beat him up, 5 to 7 people, however that happened, they they belong to a group, Scorpion. And what these guys went out and did is they looked for crime. And they weren't traffic cops. They weren't looking to make a motorist stop. What they were looking for was a way to get into a situation so they could explore what else was going on. So what are they doing? They profiled a young black man in a car. And they said they had to deal with it because he cut them off. So they had a pretext stop. And then they beat the living daylights out of him once he ran away. And I guess they picked him up close to his home. And then they beat him again until he was dead. Well, he didn't die then, but his life system was so damaged they died 2 days later. So I can't spin around in my room, in my office, my home office. And I hope to be out tomorrow because I think the last couple of days I've been besieged. And, my story is always, I have work to do. Well, the good news is I have work to do. And sometimes the bad news is I have work to do. But there's a level, you'd always rather have more to do. I think it's more vitalizing, whether it's a home assignment, it's representing clients in my case, it's taking care of the animals, it's running for office. And so this year I'll be running for office. It's not as demanding as some offices that you can run for. And I know something about that. I've been in a few campaigns. And it's also a good time to learn what people are thinking about, because as a candidate, you talk to them and they tell them things. I've never thought it was good to run during the pandemic, if you will, not just because of the safety, but because the thing that I thought was missing is when you go door to door, you really learn what people are thinking. And you can read samples and statistics and everything else, but you get a feeling, there's like a current that you can feel among the people when you talk to them. And that's the only kind of politics that I'm really interested in. In the office that I'm running for, I'm more interested in the function that we serve, that is to underwrite good practices for preserving the water we have and protecting the soil that we have. So thanks for listening to me. I hope this was interesting, and I'll be out on the trail tomorrow. I am 99% certain. Bye-bye.